Hello everybody, welcome to part 13 of building the Studebaker body. I decided that I wanted to make my own steering wheel for the Studebaker, so I purchased this tubing roller from Harbor Freight. And I'm rolling a piece of 1-inch diameter steel tube. It's thin wall, .062. And if I'm successful, I'll roll this around into a circle that's 12.5 to 13 inches in diameter. Then my plan is to, after I weld this together and put a web in it in the center, then I'll wrap it with this leather here. This is leather lace for a baseball glove, 1/4 inch thick by about 5/16, if I recall. So I have a plan of attack for that. Alright, so I'm going to keep rolling here and see if I can get a circle. Okay, I've been working this for 10 or 15 minutes and it's coming around, but it's got this little bit of a twist. To some degree that's normal when you roll a tube. It's a bit excessive here, and I'm guessing it's just, the sloppiness of the wheels. This isn't a high-dollar machine. But I'm going to straighten this out a little bit and then put it back in and roll it some more. I took some of the warp out of it, put it back in the machine, and I'm getting closer. I'm not there yet, but this might just work out. See if I can get down to about 13 inches OD. I'm happy to report success. I put the tape measure across and I'm between 12.5 and 13. So, and you can see where about, maybe 6-7 inches is wasted on each end. But I'll cut it beyond that, and then I'll force it together and weld it. Alright, let's get it out of the machine and see how it looks. Alright, this looks pretty good. I'm happy with it. 12.5. Alright, nice. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to bandsaw right through these two. That's pretty much in the middle of the two ends. And then I can bring that together with clamps and weld it. I'll straighten it out first so it's not under too much tension, but this should make for a pretty nice steering wheel. I finished welding the steering wheel ring, and I sanded it to 80 grit, so it's looking pretty good. I had a friend of mine, he has a water jet machine. I had him cut these two webs, center webs. They're made out of 1/8 inch steel. In this case it's a hot roll steel, and they were $10 a piece. This hole pattern here fits the hole pattern in the quick disconnect. So the setup would go like this. So I need to trim it, weld it. I might bend it right here to create a dish. Yeah, I like the way that looks. It's coming along okay. Back in 2012, I fashioned this exhaust pipe out of 1.5 inch diameter aluminum tubing. And I want to do something similar for the Studebaker. So I've been working on a layout, and I'm going to use a tube bender. So let's go to that next. So I purchased the tube bender to do the steering wheel, and as it turns out, it'll also bend 1.5 diameter aluminum. So I have to put in the wheels for that. It's 1.5. Got to put those in, and Then I'll bend the tube and lay it over a pattern. I've been working on the pattern. This board here will be a holding jig. It'll hold the parts and pieces while they get tack welded. So I have to draw this out full size. It'll look something like this. And you can see where I've started. This is would create a 16-inch circle if it was go all the way around. So 8-inch radius. Alright, so I've just got started drawing this out, so I have some more to do here. I've been working this 1.5-inch tubing here, and I'm getting it to bend. It's taken quite a few passes, and I've learned to really crank down on this at the end of each pass, and that'll speed it up a little bit. So a few more passes and we'll lay it over the drawing there and see how it fits. So this is looking pretty good. This will get cut off more or less right about here. So all this will go away. Yeah, this will work out just fine. Here I've propped up the exhaust pipe to get a feel for where I need to cut it, and that'll establish the line for all the rest of them. So I think it's going to be right about here. This will also help me decide where I want this to enter the side. So I'm trying to determine exactly where on the car this will rest. So I have this poster board and I traced the pattern. And I determined, there's a little line right there, that would be the last exhaust pipe. So I can transfer this onto my layout. The main reason for this tracing and the pattern here was to establish this line, the line of the body. So now I can lay in the other pieces, this being the end of the last one, so it looks decent on the body. So now I have something to work with and a line where I can make my cuts and dial it in. The rolling of this tube is going pretty good. This will get cut into segments for the short pieces of exhaust pipe. I'm not exactly sure of the radius. I'll have to experiment. I'll take it out, see how it looks, and if I need to roll it some more, I'll do that. I'm making good progress, but I do need to roll it some more. I want it to be as close to this radius as possible, and then I can just chop it up as I need it. Alright, I think this is going to work. Okay, I think I'm there. This is coming together well. Next step is to cut this into pieces, and then I can lay them out and figure out what looks best. You can see where this is coming along nicely. I'll need to cope each one of these into the pipe so that it fits nicely, and then of course these will get trimmed. And then this is the welding jig, so I'll surround this with blocks of wood so that it won't move while it's being tacked. Alright, keep moving along here. So I've managed to cut these ends to the shape of this main tube. This will be the line that I'll follow to cut them to, which is still what I consider a rough length. Now I can begin the process of coping these to get a better fit. It'll just be some trial and error with the belt disc machine and a hand file to get them to fit nice. I attach these little blocks so that this main tube isn't going anywhere, and then I can work to fit each piece. You can see how I've got that fitting reasonably well. Just a little bit more work. Then I'll block it in both sides, work the next one, block it in. The whole idea is the blocks hold it in place while it's being tack welded. I just finished coping in this last piece. I still need to attach a block here. I'm real close to having this ready to be welded. I have to cut it off square and put a block there to keep everything from moving. But so far so good. I finished all the work of fitting these pieces, and I installed all the blocks to hold everything tight. So now it's ready to be welded. Alright. It's a good day in the cycle cart workshop. I had a friend of mine who's good at TIG welding put this thing together for me, and it turned out beautiful. I'm real happy with it. So I'm going to cut an angle on the end here. Of course, it'll get polished to some degree, and I have to figure out how to install it on the cycle cart. I think I'll prop it up against the side of the body and see how it looks. Oh yeah, I love it when a plan comes together. Oh, this is going to work out fine. It's going to look good. This is one hot 6-cylinder engine. Remember, this is a 37 Studebaker modified. It's a lake racer, so it's set up for speed. Okay, now I just have to figure out how to install it, and won't be long before I have the exhaust part of this finished. I spent a little time squaring off the ends, and I've also determined that this is the location where I want it to exit the body. And my thinking is to drill 6 inch-and-a-half diameter holes, and then I could use a file to open them up and get each tube to protrude into the body just a little bit. And then I'll have a panel on the inside that they'll attach to in some fashion. I made a little pattern here to help me locate the holes I want to drill. I'm going to use a 1 3/4 hole saw, and then I'll use my punch here to give me the location. Close. I need to shave a little bit here and here. Maybe a little bit right back here. But that's looking pretty good. I spent a couple minutes with the file working on those openings, and next thing you know, it slipped right in. Alright, it's nice and straight too. Needs very little adjustment to look correct. So now I have to come up with the method of attaching it on the inside. Let's see what I come up with. At this point, I want to make sure that the exhaust pipe is level, or at least looks good. So that's what I'm working on now, so I can shore it up and do the final installation. So I have it sitting here, and I set this battery pack on here, and it actually makes it line up pretty good. Yeah, it lines up with the seam of the body. But one issue is it doesn't line up in the back just right. I might put a slight curve to the pipe. Let me think about that. I managed to get it to line up pretty good without having to put a curve in the pipe. And I'm going to secure it in 3 locations. Right here, one here, and one back here through the body. So I made this little angled piece here and shrunk it a little bit to follow the curve of the body. I'm going to rivet this on, and then these will be sheet metal screws so that I could theoretically remove it. And then I'll show you the idea for this in a little bit. But once it's on there, it won't be going anywhere. It'll hold up nice. I decided to jam some wood blocks in there, and then I'll run some screws into the wood blocks. And for good measure, I'm gluing them in with some 15-minute epoxy. So that should hold up okay. They're jammed in there pretty tight to begin with, so. This worked out pretty good. I put the sheet metal screws into the wood blocks and then riveted this on. And it's fairly stout. It flexes only because the body does, so I'm still going to install at least one, probably both. Okay, so that's next. I'm using a 5/16 bolt through the body to secure the exhaust pipe. And this will enter the side of the tube. On the underside of the tube, I'm going to drill a hole to allow access to install a nut and a washer. These are a little long right now. They'll get cut to length once I get the setup here. So I'm drilling the holes on the underside right now. So I'm doing this cutout with a router, making it kind of an oval. This is the bolt that will come through the side. There'll be a tube here that'll make it look better. The whole idea, though, is that this hole is large enough to accept a 5/16 nut and washer, and for that matter, the wrench too. So that should work out okay. I have one to do over here. I'm happy to report I finished the exhaust pipe. It's nice and solid. You can see here the attachment point, and there's a hole under here where I had a heck of a time getting the nut on there, but I managed. Another one back here. So that's nice and stout. I might cut a little angle here. Alright. I'm glad that one's done. That one took me almost 3 weeks of getting ready to do it, and then getting the parts and cutting them. Glad that's done. So I'm on to the steering wheel. Back to the steering wheel. Alright, back on the steering wheel. My goal here is to center up the ring on the web, And then in the process I created hash marks for alignment and then initial marks for cutting. I also bent the arms up 3/4 of an inch off the deck, and that does create a little bit of a dish, you can see there. So let's see, the next step is to cut these arms to length, rough length, and try to get this to set up nice and square for welding. I made the cuts on the arms, and little by little I've been grinding away to get a good fit. I drew a center line here, and that allows me to eyeball this thing up pretty darn close. It's not bad. Maybe just one more little bit of grinding to get it to drop a little further in, and then I can weld it. Yeah, that looks alright. Flip it over and tack the other side, and then I can finish welding it off. I finished the welding, and I'm happy with the way it's coming along here. Has just a slight dish to it. I like that. I'll clean it up and install the quick disconnect, and then we can put it on the car and just see how it looks before I wrap it. I think that's looking pretty good. The slight dish helps get it away from the dash a little bit. Yeah. I think I'm going to paint the center web an aluminum color, and then of course I'll wrap this with the leather. Yep. Yep, I'm liking that. I decided to paint the center some of this metallic spray that I had laying around. I finished painting the web. This is still raw steel, which I'm going to wrap with the leather. So I'm going to let it sit 24 hours and let the paint cure. It's dry to touch, but I don't want to mess with it just yet. So I have something else I want to work on while I'm waiting for this to dry. So on the model, you can see where the exhaust pipe turned out pretty close. But I also need to do the other side, do something here with the intake. So I have a plan of attack. I was wandering around the hardware store today, so let me show you what I gathered up. So my goal is to create this look here as best I can. So I was over at Ace Hardware wandering around, and I bought a piece of 2-inch PVC pipe, and then these are little, what are they? Flush valve washers for a toilet. But they fit over the pipe pretty good. Let me get one on there. So that doesn't look too bad. That'll sit up flush against the body like that. And then I'm going to use some of this hardware cloth and put a screen in here. And then this will be the pattern here, 11 inches wide. And I'll install them on the inside similar to the exhaust pipe, probably with a little angle iron or something. So that doesn't, I think there's about $10 worth of stuff to create this, so that's not bad. Okay, so I need to drill 3 holes in the side. Oh yeah, that's gonna look good. Put the screens in there. I think I'll leave it the white PVC. It'll be a simple attachment on the inside. All right. Some jobs take 3 weeks, some jobs take 3 minutes. All right, I'm happy with that. Moving along here, I've developed my approach to attaching these. I've taped them in place so they'll stay put. I made this little structure here. That's flat black paint, so if you look inside the pipe you'll see black. And then this rivets here and here. My plan is to put a screw into each tube. I'd say it looks okay on the inside. And I'd say it looks okay on the outside too. I think we can check this one off the list. Alright, I'm happy with the way that turned out. Alright. Okay, let's talk about steering wheels for a minute. This is the steering wheel to old number 27. I put this together 7 or 8 years ago and wrapped it with the same leather I'm planning to use now, and it's held up great. I've had tons of people drive the car. I've never had to make a repair. I did put contact cement under it as I was wrapping it. So that's my plan for the newest Studebaker wheel. Is similar. This is the monocar wheel, and this was a go-kart wheel, the steering wheel that I purchased. I think it's 12 inches in diameter. Personally, I think the steering wheel for a cycle cart needs to be in the range of 13 inches. That's just my personal opinion. This started out as 1-inch diameter tube, and then I wrapped it with just regular cotton string, white string, and then I put varnish on it. Now this has held up exceptionally well. It's gotten filthy dirty and I've been able to clean it. So not a bad way to go with the, you just buy the steering wheel. This is a custom made wheel for the BMW, and it's made with some segmented walnut pieces and with an aluminum center. Nice looking wheel, but from a practical standpoint it's too slippery, hard to hold on to when you're on rough ground. I had to add tape. This is when I was up at Titan. I just added tape just because I was having a hard time holding on to it, even with gloves. But it makes for a nice looking wheel. So on the Studebaker, I started with 1 inch so that by the time, here's a piece of the same tubing. By the time I wrap it, I'll be at 1 1/4, let's say. Yeah, about 1 1/4. And it holds up very well, and as time wears on, it takes on a patina. You can see that's the color it started out as. So that's my plan. I'll use contact cement, and I'll just take my time. A couple of evenings, I think I can knock it off, have it ready to go. Okay. Alright, I'm making progress on the steering wheel. Now you can see where I've already wrapped a couple of the 6-foot long pieces around. It only goes about 6 inches. Before I wrap these though, I put on these 4 locations. And that basically gives me a nice clean starting spot to wrap it. Now I'll have to splice it together several times. So when I do that, I have this little angled cut right there, little scarf cut, and that helps it transition to the next piece. Try to hide that on the underside. Okay, continuing on. As with everything on this cycle cart, this has been a bit of a challenge also. But I'm very happy with the way it's looking. I just have to finish the other half and I can call it done. Well, I'm pretty happy with the way this steering wheel turned out. Yeah, that leather lace is a little bit of a challenge to work with, but when it's all done, it looks good. There was a strange transition point as these two came together, so I used the smaller lace to hide that. This is wet right here. I just wrapped this, so that'll shrink up once it's dry like this did. And then I wrapped this around these locations once around and tucked it into itself, and when that dries it'll tighten up. So I like the way it looks. It has a handmade quality to it. That's what I was shooting for. Not perfect, but certainly good enough for cycle carts. Should be easy to hold on to also. I wanted to make one more improvement to the looks of this steering wheel before I called it finished. I made this little disc which will go right here, and then I have these short cap screws that will thread into this piece. These thread through the steering wheel into the quick disconnect, and then this is a decorative center acorn nut. So I'm going to put that together real quick and see how it looks, and then it'll be done. I think that looks a little bit better. Alright, now we can call this custom made steering wheel finished. Alright, I enjoyed making that. That was fun. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of this segment. I had a good time working on the exhaust and the intake and the steering wheel. It won't be long before I'm finished with this and ready for paint. There's not many items left on the list. We'll go over that in the next segment. So as always, I appreciate that you follow along, and we'll see you next time.